So part of my past is having, because of a relationship with God like we all have. The Spirit said, do what I've called you to do, and I'll take care of the rest.
When you get into that space of realizing who you really are at a core, which is energy, then you can raise your vibrational frequency, your energy level, up to a level where you can connect and make that divine connection.
Black people in this country have to embrace ownership. We don't own anything. Therefore, all the dollars we get go out to somebody else who owns things.
Look for a miracle in America's mess and make a testimony out of your test. Well, kind greetings and welcome to Triumphant Thursday with Dr. PJ. And we are so happy that you have joined us tonight, and invite you, if you will, please, to invite others to join you. You can have a watch party. You can have a private party. You can do a whole lot of things to invite people to be with you tonight as we explore ways in which we can experience victories and triumph over life's challenges. For the last time, probably in this month, we are happy to welcome back the Reverend Dr. Jamie Eaddy, who is quite a talented and well-credentialed thanatologist, I think is the right word. And she deals a lot with giving birth to death, so to speak, is one way of putting it. And I've been reading all week, Dr. J, a book that is entitled A Journey of the Soul After Suicide. And it is a conversation between two brothers, the brother that is living and the brother that committed suicide. And it's an incredible book because it does talk about the probability that that there is life after death, and that life is about the next journey of perfection, the next journey toward oneness, the next journey walking in the light. And a lot of one of the things that the author talks about is the three levels of the journey when people commit suicide. And the first level is finding and is understanding how it impacts the family that is left behind, and also getting an understanding that this happens with people who have more ego than heart, so to speak. Then the second level is a little tougher. These are people who lost their heart, that they're callous now, and they are embittered by life circumstances, and they have to have a little bit more nurturing, whereas the first person is often met by relatives who have gone on before them. The second and third level are met by angels who are experts in softening the bitterness and getting through the hard shell. It's a fascinating book. And of course, we are always happy to have Chaplain Maureen F. Burns with us. We were talking before you came on about the next series being about the women at the cross, and how they get a double unjust experience in watching their Redeemer and watching their would-be Savior on the cross, as well as living in a patriarchic society and reading, and in our generation, reading a Bible that is heavy in patriarchal viewpoints and theology and lifestyles and in terms of the veterans talking about how the soldier at the cross had to do what he was ordered to do, and how that not only fulfilled prophecy, but how do we think in our conversation he felt, and how have we felt during our times in service when we did what we were ordered to do, that may have had nothing to do with our personal values, but the fact that we had signed up, we were at the mercy of, or lack thereof, of an unjust empire. And how all of this fits into for me is going to be a very interesting process. How this fits into the theme of we won't be silent or silenced. That was the title of the article this week. And let me share with you before we go into our discussion. The scripture for that week, for this week, was pray always. Pray in the Spirit. Pray about everything in every way you know how. And keeping all this in mind, pray on behalf of God's people. Keep on praying feverishly and be on the lookout until evil has been stayed. Ephesians 6:18, and I think that is the probably the NIV. And we start out, and the little picture in the corner, we'll ask Chaplain Sue to put up momentarily. Dear God, a very dear friend of the United Church of Christ, Ken Medema, metered, Lord, listen to your children praying. Verse 1 reads, something's gonna happen like the world has never known when the people of the Lord get down to pray. Doors are going to swing open and the walls come a-tumbling down when the people of the Lord get down to pray. And this is the chorus. Lord, listen to your children praying. Lord, send your spirit in this place. Lord, listen to your children praying. Send us love, send us power, send us grace. Though Medema had Sunday school children in mind when he penned this song, I find that it affirms that we are all God's children. I needed this reminder. My well ran dry, and I felt no particular inspiration to write until I came across this selection and the words in Ephesians, pray always. When you don't know what to do, pray. When you know what to do, pray. Then I remembered this is Women's History Month, and I thought about the millions of women who are silent or silenced, feeding the monsters of sexism and rapists and molestation, partner abuse, sexual abuse, and a host of injustices. Are the women who speak on the abuse they experienced by the New York governor telling the truth? I have no idea. I know this. I was molested as a tween by an uncle. May he rest in peace. Until I voiced that, the monster told me it was my fault. Something I said or did. No. There are such things as dirty old and sometimes young people who misuse their power. The incredible Bishop Eaddy Flunder, the founder of City of Refuge, United Church of Christ, and the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, cut an album years ago titled, We Won't Be Silent Anymore. Google and listen to it for encouragement and empowerment. Set yourself free from the monsters. Don't be silent or silenced anymore. I felt pretty good about that article after I got to it. And I didn't get to it until Tuesday night. Normally, I try to get my work to Pastor Sue by Saturday night, no later than Sunday night. But the point that I'm making is that the women at the cross and the women throughout Holy Writ, for the most part, are silent. Their perception, their perspective, their thoughts, their ideas are not taken into consideration, or they are silenced. Either way, I think that that during Women's History Month, that we ought to have at least one conversation about the advantage of finding your voice and speaking up and let the chips fall where they may. Now, my initial question is this, Dr. J, to start the conversation. What do you think it takes for a woman to have enough before she starts to speak? I mean, when is enough enough? It probably varies from woman to woman. And I guess some women never find their voice. And they just live in silence, in misery and silence, or confused in silence, or in blind submission in silence. And those are their monsters. And I just think it's,
you know, that's a good question. And I am, so let me do this. That's a great question. And I think at one time I would think about, I would come at it from the perspective that every woman should speak in a certain way, right? That finding your voice meant that this is what finding your voice looks like. But the truth is that each of us is discovering our voice at a different pace, and discovering that our voices are different. And we need to make space for that. And so the woman who the woman who discovers her voice, and this is woman, right? Woman, queer woman, trans woman who discovers her voice, who uses a microphone and has a large platform, right? That woman who discovers her voice and speaks in that way is great. But the woman who discovers her voice and the way she speaks is by, this woman works, and say her work is as one who does domestic work. Maybe she works in a hotel, and maybe the way she discovers her voice is that when you say, "Hey, honey," she doesn't answer. Right? That she may be vacuuming the floor and she hears you saying, "Hey, honey," but she won't answer until you walk up and say, "Excuse me, may I have some more towels for my room?" That when you say, "Hey, hey, hey," and she hears you, maybe for her, she won't be able to say, "My name's not honey." And she won't be able to voice it in a way that we are like, well, first of all, I would tell him that my name is not honey. Okay, you would. But for her strength is her heart is racing. You know, if the bosses find out that she's ignoring people, she could lose her job. But her boldness says, you know what? If they don't say, "Excuse me, miss," I'm not answering. And
very good.
That's her voice.
Okay.
And so I think we have to, and so when do we come to that point? I don't know, something in us says today they have to say "miss." Today Today they have like something in us, and it is different for all of us. But I think bigger than that for me, I think I'm trying to get at is making space for the different ways that we use our voices, the different valid ways that our voices come into being, and that it's right and it's good. And yeah, and that's good that that's how she uses her voice. And don't diminish her, because she did answer when he said, "Hey, miss," because that was the strength that she needed to demand her. That was what she demanded, that he said, "Miss." Hey, miss, what she demanded. And
Okay.
that's okay too. So
Okay. So what do you think about women who are expressing themselves 20 years later, 10 years later, um, 5 years later, or a year later?
yeah, you know, we
It's
don't
not that they're just finding their voice. What do you think their process has
Right.
been?
And in some cases, it might be that they just found their voice, but in some cases, it is, I am discovering how to use my voice. It is a process of discovery. In some cases, it is that someone has beat my voice out of me so badly that it took years of regaining strength and having reopening. They bandage these wounds poorly, and we need to reopen some wounds and really heal. So now I have full voice. You might need to do some like it. Yeah, we need to make space for that too, right? I need to. You some folks, we snatch their vocal cords, and it is literally a matter of figuring out how we re-implant the vocal cords, so that I don't have it yet. I got to learn how to speak again, and that might be part of the healing process. And so, yeah, I may be really 10 years after something discovering my voice. I might be discovering my healing. I might have had a voice and you didn't know I had my voice, because this is a new space and it's a new voice in this space. But I was speaking around there. It just sounded different. In all of that. And the truth is, I think if given the space, we are growing and healing and learning our voice in new ways. And when you have a nurturing environment, sometimes we have a voice and we say the wrong stuff. And it's like, okay, let me try this again. And all of that is part of learning and developing your voice. Yeah, I had a voice 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, I didn't have the patience to sit with my voice. I had a voice 20 years ago, and 20 years ago, I wouldn't think before I used it. I would just say what came to me. And so some cases we had a voice and the voice was too big in that moment. We might have needed to sit back for a minute and think. Yeah, it's a lot with discovering who you are. Because so often we're told that who we are ain't right. That ain't right. And so discovering your voice and discovering who you are is a process. We can help that by nurturing our babies a little bit better, a little bit differently. But for many of us, we had to kind of discover after the wounds and stuff. But yeah, it's okay. And it's okay if you are just now discovering. I'm not gonna say my age, but I will be so many years this year, and I feel like I am stepping into the best years of my life. Like I feel like I'm getting emotional saying it. Like, this is the best my voice has been.
Okay.
I'm speaking with the most clarity that I've ever spoken.
Isn't your birthday real soon?
It's August.
What made me think you were in March? Okay. It's August.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the most clarity, right? And I would ideally, I would have hoped. I mean, I don't know if I would have hoped, but as a young person, I wrote my life so that my voice would have been more clear before now.
Okay.
Right.
So you do agree that there is always that option, always that opportunity to write your life through your voice.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of it. That's part of it.
Okay. I haven't had the the opportunity and the honor of reading Chaplain Maureen's chapter in a book that she is writing titled 40 Years in the Desert. Is that correct, Chap?
That's correct.
But I suspect that I will be hearing her speak her experiences from then, whenever then is,
Right.
to whenever then will be when she has finished the book.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is that the way am I reading you correctly, Chap?
Well, I will be speaking about my history and talking about what's happened, but it's also going to be a book on healing and overcoming trauma and learning to deal with PTSD and going from trauma to triumph.
So what are the words as we are finding our voice? What are the words? And I'm not asking you to reveal anything that's in your book, Chap. This goes back to Dr. J. What are some words that can be used for self-healing and for self-love and for self-forgiveness and for self-awareness? Those four in particular.
Yeah. I
And
think
not necessarily in that order.
right. But they're all connected, right? Go ahead, Chaplain Mo. Go ahead, because you go ahead.
I think John Lennon had it right when he said, "Let it be. Mother Mary speaks to me. Let it be."
Mother Mary. Now that reminds me of this author who opens himself up to a channeler, or a shaman is another word, and that's another question that I have. Because I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about contacting and meeting with a shaman to sharpen that. To sharpen the sound of that inner voice. Okay, because that's where I want to live while I am writing Healing My Soul.
Right.
I want to live with that voice, that all-knowing, everywhere, all the time, loving voice, that God in me, that God that speaks to me. I want that voice. I want to get a clear intonation, if I may use that word, of what that sounds like, because it is said it sounds like me. Okay, then all well and good, but back to these four questions that overlap, and your thoughts about getting help from people who specialize in being psychics and shamans and channelers. Do you have the classical, oh, that's evil, idea behind? I lived in New Orleans almost 2 years, and it never occurred to me while I was there to find such a person.
Right. When you talk about self-healing and self-love and self-forgiveness, and I think I talked about this, or maybe one of the episodes that we've done together, that I did this collection of poetry and called "Getting Naked to Get Free," and it is mostly my story, some creative liberty, but where I talk to myself about myself, right? And for me, that is the healing journey, being willing and able to step into those places where the hurt exists, to look at the wound and to see if there is anything that still needs to be covered up. And so I'll start us there. I know we're coming up on a break, but getting naked to get free is how I start that journey of self-healing, self-love, and forgiveness. And I think that all of us can kind of take that journey together, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that on the other side of the break.
Sounds good, Doc. Pastor Sue, you're on.
Be ever so ready.
Indeed.
Indeed. So let's get into.
Oh,
I'm
no.
so grateful for this conversation on the importance of our voices. And one of the things that I wrote in the chat was that when we find our voice, it is a reclaiming of our worth. And so when we can't allow other people to talk to us any old kind of way, right? Going back to what Dr. Jamie was talking about earlier, but let's get into our announcements for now. So first up, we want to bring to your attention, of course, Dr. Jamie, her free webinar that's taking place tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will always love you, remembering. And so it is a time for those who are participating to gather to remember their loved ones. And Dr. Jamie is going to be leading participants in rituals of remembering through naming and the sharing of memorials. So if that speaks to you, if you've lost someone or something, if you lost anything, and you need a space, space to be held for you, I do invite you to go to tinyurl.com/remember loved ones and sign up for this free webinar. It is free. Did I mention that it is free? You do not want to miss it. Again, it is tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our chaplain, Maureen Burns, is a advanced law of attraction practitioner, and she has, the name of her company is called Transformations Possible. Learn law of attraction and spiritual principles for success. And there she has life coaching available. So if you are interested, if you're in the market for life coaching, be sure to send her an email to transformationspossible@gmail.com, or you can give her a phone call at 808-264-6252. If you've been joining us on Tuesdays over the last month or so, you know that we went through a series on grieving on our Tuesday nights, connected to TFAM's National Veteran Support Group. And so we are going to be having some other programming coming back on Tuesdays, and we want you to be there for it. So please head over to our page on Facebook, TFAM Veterans, and also join our group at TFAM Veterans Group. If you are a veteran, if you identify as LGBTQIA, or if you're an ally, and in particular, if you are of color, we want you to join our group. Next up, really quickly, Kara Solutions. Focus on your passion. Let Kara handle the rest. Administrative, business, and consulting services for dreamers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, faith, and community-based organizations. And for more information, head on over to www.kara-solutions.com. We want to give you an opportunity to advertise or perhaps become a sponsor for Triumphant Thursdays with Dr. PJ Anderson. We have 3 ways that you can do that. The first is by an info listing or a banner. I'm going to show you what that looks like right here. That's an example of a banner, right? And so in that space, we would up to 200 characters. We would put the name of your business and your website. And for $15 per week, that would be your space during our time of announcements. Or static overlay is what you're looking at right now on the screen. This is considered a flyer ad, and that's at $25 per week. And then also a video ad of $40 per week. And let me show you what a video ad would look like. So there you have it again. That was an example of what your video ad could look like. So if you are interested, if you need one created for you, you can contact me at sue@carrot-solutions.com. If you're perhaps not ready to advertise or sponsor, but you would still like to give to this ministry, you also have the opportunity to do that. We invite you to sow a seed at Cash App $space for Grace MI. Or you can send a check to Space for Grace Without Walls, UCC, P.O. Box 23173, Lansing, Michigan 48909. So these are your announcements, and I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. PJ, Chaplain Maureen, and our special guest, Reverend Dr. Jamie Eaddy.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We thank you so much for being a part of our Thursday, Triumphant Thursdays with Dr. PJ Anderson. And we are especially grateful for Chaplain Maureen, co-host for our Tuesday evening broadcast, and Reverend Dr. Jamie Eaddy, who is, in my opinion, an incredible woman of God. I want you to become a therapist. People, we need you. We need you to be a therapist. So how is the giving birth to death going before we get back into our conversation? How is that for you?
Well, I'm still walking with people and churches and organizations who are, whether it's an individual who has died and they are trying to navigate their way through grief, or for some, they are trying to let go of dead things. So some of it is helping people let go of dead things so that they can live. So,
Okay.
So that's some of the doula work as well. Because to be a death doula, the work that I do as a death doula is a little more broad than just helping people navigate their way as someone is dying. But it can be tiring, but it's a work that I believe I'm called and pulled to. So I make sure I do what's necessary to get the rest, and be refilled and replenished and get joy and have, deep embodied joy so that I can continue to do that work. Yeah.
So a question for both of you. How do you know? Not how do you think or how you believe, but how do you know when you hear the voice of God?
So folks won't like my answer, because the truth is, no, I'm going to say the truth is, we are all doing our best. We say we heard the voice of God and it sounded like it, you said it already, right? I heard the voice of God. It sounded like myself. Like there is something that sits in me that feels right, that it feels connected. It feels natural. I believe I'm hearing God. I believe this is right. And there are times when I have made a turn and ended up in a place and looked around and I said, maybe I didn't hear right, or maybe I heard right, and this is a place I'm supposed to be for some reason that I don't know, right? So ultimately, I can say that I have a knowing, and I'm trying my best. I could be wrong. I have a deep knowing, and I still have space for I could be wrong.
And we must keep those spaces.
Yep, I know.
Yeah.
And yes. I could be wrong.
Yes, yes. Very recently, I had an experience where I wrestled with the question and wrestled with the question and wrestled with the question, and I kept getting the answer, not yet, because it was something that I really didn't want to do.
Mm,
But in order for me to get the information that I needed, I was wrestling with, is there another way?
mm,
And that didn't come to me until I had a session with my psychiatrist, and I
mhm,
brought it up to him because I knew I was wrestling, but I felt that the wrestling was okay, that I wasn't hurting anybody in the wrestling. I was just prolonging the inevitable,
mhm.
not certain of which route to take for this inevitability. And then after I called, after I talked with my psychiatrist, which is all a part of the same conversation about other things, he said, "Well, why don't you contact the Department of Records?"
Mm.
And that's what I did.
Right.
And I hadn't sent that request off a day before I heard from the person I was trying to avoid.
Mm,
And I knew then that I had done the right thing, because to have contacted that person may have been more of a mess than I wanted to deal with. So you're right that there are times when I'm not certain, and yet I am certain, but I need more certainty. If that makes sense,
mhm.
Chaplain Mo.
Well, for me, especially with PTSD, I get locked up in the past and I get locked up in tripping on the future. And what I have to do is bring myself to the present moment. When God talks to me, it's outside of time. And that's how I know.
Okay.
You,
It's
you
not
mean
limited.
you mean it's not in the past and it's not in the future?
It's in the present, but it's forever. It's open. It's open-ended.
Hmm. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Like when I get angry and when I get upset, I'll hear in the back of my mind, be still, calm down, everything's going to be all right. And I think of that as like one of my ancestors' voices, like my grandmother or something telling me that and giving me that advice. But that saying can work anytime that I'm
Okay.
upset, anytime that I'm angry.
Okay.
If I use
Okay.
that saying, I'll be safe and
Mm,
I'll calm down and I won't be angry.
Okay. Okay. I got it
So,
now. I
God,
think
so,
I
God,
understand better.
so God's advice is present tense, but it's open ended and
I
forever.
see. I see. I see. Interesting. So, Dr. J,
mhm.
what are your thoughts about shamans and
So,
psychics?
I don't shun or say no to any past, right? Again, I'm a Christian woman. I identify as a Christian woman, and I say, even as a woman who identifies as a Christian, our Christianities, plural, are different, right? Everybody that says they're a Christian, we have different Christianities.
Yes.
Um, my path to divine might not be for everybody, and that's okay. I do not diminish anybody else's path to divine. Like I can't say that path is wrong. I can't. I don't say that. I should say that I don't say that path is wrong, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that I don't have the wisdom. I don't have the capacity to do.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I think that people have gifts, and who am I to tell you not to go to however you see fit to get what the wisdom, the knowledge, the wisdom, the gifting that you seek. If
Mm-hmm.
that's the route you want to take, then by all means go that route. So I would never tell you not to seek the wise elder in a different tradition. If that's the route that you chose to seek. There are many of our elders, many of our ancestors who would not necessarily line up with what many of our churches would appreciate today. But it's really a matter of tradition and not necessarily. You're right. So I'm okay with the route that you take. And there are days that, you know, I dream dreams. I have dreamed dreams and had
Yes.
visions and gone to people. It's not something that I go to regularly. Like, listen, this is what I dreamt,
Right.
but I can tell you as fact that I have dreamt dreams and seen visions and gone to people and said, this is what I saw, and it happened as was given.
My Lord.
To me. So I'm not one to say that someone can't receive
Yes.
a
Yes.
vision of something. You know, it's interesting. A girlfriend of mine, dear sister of mine, went to Virginia Union years before I did. And I had a dream that it was a car accident. And I was like, woke up and I was like, this is really, really very weird. And I called, instead of calling her, I called another friend of ours. I said, I had this really weird dream, and I described the dream. And she said, what is wrong with you? You and these dreams. Well, didn't our friend have the accident? She was not hurt. No one was hurt, but she was, and everything that I described, our friend called and said, this is what happened. And again, now it's like, it happened just as you said it. I wonder what would have happened had you called. You know, we can't get into that or anything.
Sure.
But, you know, certainly we can receive visions. I mean,
Yes.
that's not unusual. And that's not like, you don't have to be a Christian to receive visions.
Okay, I got it. Yes.
You don't have to be a
Amen.
Christian to receive visions.
Right. Sometimes you might be a little bit better off because you don't have all of that indoctrination to overcome, and which is what Chaplain Mo and I and maybe even you and some others, there's so much we have to unlearn.
Yeah.
The indoctrinations, the dogma, the tradition that doesn't have doodly squat to do with doodly squat.
I'm a recovering Catholic.
Yeah, right. And the Pope taking back. I mean, imagine the hearts that are broken when the Pope tweaked his voice in support of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of those times I think that even the Pope needs to think through before saying, you know, and that's so important to reach a point in life where you do more thinking than you do speaking on many days.
Yeah. And there's this quote, because of what you just said, you do more thinking and listening, right, than necessarily speaking. And I just finished reading and listening to 7,000 Ways to Listen. Staying close to what is sacred. And I was posting all week. Pastor Sue may have seen me out, well, maybe 2 weeks ago. I was just, this book had everybody. I was slain. I said, if I'm going to be slain, if I'm going to be out, everybody else is going to be out with me. And I posted this one particular passage, and it says, just in terms of listening, what are you listening to? And you know, are you letting the injury or limitation of one thing injure or limit all things? Who has your ear these days? The one in you who says yes, or the one in you who says no? Are you listening to the part of you life is trying to awake? Are you trying to hear all that is unsaid? This is like as we discover our voice, as we learn what's within us and learn how to speak, it's really about learning to listen, right? That's really what that
Yes.
journey is. Are you open to the soft moment in the middle of everything harsh
Mm,
that will reveal us to us and to each other?
mm,
Which of your treasured maps is keeping you from the path you were meant to discover?
mm.
Can you endure your uncertainty until it shows you another deeper way? Um, and I'll stop there. But these are just questions as we discover our own voices, as we get in touch with ourselves, as we do this path of self-healing and forgiveness. These are some of the things that, I read it in a book, but that was some of the journey I took towards self-healing. Asking myself, this injury right here, does this injury, will I let this injury prevent me from trying again, from loving again, from living again, from experiencing joy again? Will this one injury stop me from experiencing life again? Right. So asking myself those hard questions, being willing to explore the hurt and go deep enough into the hurt until I can touch on the healing. Like that is how I discovered my voice. Being willing to do the work. Like many of us will go to therapy. Well, some of us will go to therapy, but knowing that even in the going to therapy, that's not enough. We got to even do work in therapy. Like just showing up,
Yes.
like I'm here, fix me. Like
Yes.
that's not enough.
Right.
Like the hard work. I did a workshop the other day called Mirrors, Mapping, and Making Meaning. Like once I'm in therapy and the mirror is on me, what am I, when I discover me, the me that I am becoming, the me that I have become, am I willing to do the work necessary to imagine a new me? Yeah, what am I willing to do? Am I willing to throw away the labels that other people put on me? Like that's the work of the self-healing and the self-love. Um, the work of saying, I know you said it was my fault. I know you said I was bad and I'm dirty. But what happened to me, which means it's not my fault. And because it's not my fault, then I don't have to wear the I'm not worthy, I'm bad, I don't deserve to be here, cloak that I've been wearing all my life. I can take that off. I deserve to take that off. Like all of that is the journey towards self-healing and self-love and self-forgiveness. And sometimes we can't take those journeys by ourselves. The work we have to, but sometimes somebody who recognizes our humanity and our personhood has to come alongside us and put those words in our ear and tell us that we're worthy and affirm us and say, yeah, it wasn't your fault, so that we can also then say, yeah, it wasn't my fault, right? And start to work on the self-healing and self-love and discover our voice, whatever way we choose to speak, knowing that all of the ways we use our voices is welcome at the table. So
It's phenomenal. So, a few weeks ago, we were chatting about this. You made the comment that should have written it down when it came to me. I was listening to you so intently. Okay, this was the comment, kind of wrapped up in a question. How do we reach individuals who, particularly preachers, who continually demonize Mrs. Job for saying what she said? And a few weeks ago, you really expanded on, she lost the same thing that he lost,
right.
and
Yeah. One, we have to, so I We love Job, don't we? He lost
Yes.
everything, and then he got
Right.
double for his trouble. Okay,
Yeah.
I hear you. But she lost everything too.
Yes.
Not only did she lose everything that he lost, but then she also got to see her husband covered in sores and suffering as well, right? So she lost the children like him. She lost what he lost, and then saw her husband going through it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that we kind of push to the side is that grief is a very real human emotion, and that God knows it. Job was grieving, and we make space for his grief.
But not for hers.
Right, and his wife was grieving, and we don't make space for her grief.
Exactly.
She didn't leave. She's still there.
Yes.
And the truth is that I have wanted to cuss. Like I have been so hurt and felt like a loss was so deep that I just wanted to just, you know, the curse. At least, you know, it says curse God, but to cuss God, to be, and
yeah,
die.
yeah.
You know, there was a scene in A Different World where she like I don't know if it was A Different World or Kingdom Come, and she like, take me now, when she want to fall out. Like we've all had those that moment where you felt like the loss was so great. I'm gonna die here. Like you might as I know that your loss is so great because my loss is so great.
Yes.
But we might as well die here. And here's the thing that gets me about Job, the Job's wife story, the way we do Job's wife story, is that we limit her story to cuss God and die. We don't, she lost everything. She's still there with Job. Her husband is covered in sores. We don't talk about the fact that I am married to a man, and God, you up here, y'all, you done had this backdoor meeting about my husband.
I love it.
I didn't necessarily sign up for that, for you to have no backdoor meeting about my husband. I ain't signed up for that, right? So we don't expand her story. And here's the problem. Different biblical character, but do we limit David's story to Bathsheba and putting Uriah? Like we don't take his story and make it a snippet. But we take, it's like it's the sexism, right? It's the patriarchy. We do it. We take her story and all she did is say this, cuss God and die. That's her whole story. And we don't expand our imagination even around women, period. And so I just invite us to expand our imagination. Like, what would you do? Just regardless of her being Job's wife, like just what would you do if, you know, your sibling, God had a conversation with somebody about your sibling. It's just the two of you, and God had a conversation about them, and this was the outcome. Like, just expand our imagination a bit, because Job's wife, we want to keep her right here. She said, "Cuss God and die," and she is a horrible person for it. And I'm not feeling that. And so, when you are grieving, there is sadness, there is anger, there is frustration, and all those emotions are human. And God knows that we feel those emotions. And I mean, Jesus had Jesus human. He had emotions. He had the same kind of anger and frustration and sadness and disappointment. He experienced those same emotions. Like, we gotta let people be human. God knows we are. God knows we are. And don't limit my story to the one thing that you think is the worst of me. Like, don't limit my story to the one thing that you think is the worst of me. Because I know we ain't got, but don't limit your story. No, because here's the thing that I learned about myself.
All right.
I always tell people, I used to tell my story from the vantage point of being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and a person who witnessed domestic violence. I limited my own story, and not so much the worst of me, but to the two most painful, storylines of my book.
Sure.
Right. we don't have to do that because we are more than that. So
Yes.
even tell the whole story. There's a movie called Basic, and they used to say, tell the story right. Like tell the whole story and tell the story right. It's a corny movie, but I liked it. But tell the story right. Tell your whole story. Don't limit me to the worst part of my storyline, but I also have to remember not to limit myself to the one storyline that might be considered the worst or the toughest or the most challenging. Let me tell you my whole story. Let's tell Job's wife whole story. Let's do like Dr. Will Gaffney. Let's meet with Dr. Gaffney and get some more story. Let's do the midrash of the story. So it's 9:00. I'm glad I was able to join tonight. But where there's grief, there's sadness and anger and pain. And if you done lost all your children and your servants and the house, and your husband is sitting there, boils and stuff all over his body, he done covered himself in ashes because he's sad. Yes, God, I am upset with you, baby. You ought to be upset too. And we might as well just die here, because what else do we have to live for? And I know more than Job has felt that way, and more than his wife has felt that way in our lives. So,
well, Dr. Jamie, I think that what it means with your presentation, and particularly in the last 10 minutes, means to me is that you really must come back.
We gotta figure out how to do this grief thing. We don't do that Job thing. We're gonna figure out.
Yes, because that could very well be one of the stories that we talk about. The patriarchal affect of women in the Bible. I think that would be ideal, and we'll take as many Thursdays as you have. How about that?
I love it.
So we can talk about that at the end of the show. Chaplain Maureen, response from you, please.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
You we are leaving you, our listening audience, our viewing audience, tonight on a high note of triumph, because we have opened the way for women in Holy Writ and women in contemporary life to find their voice. And it will not always be easy, but it's worth the struggle. It's worth, I didn't quite mean for it to come out that way. Let me think on this and restate it differently. It may be, okay, I'm willing to put my job on the line to be respected as a person. Okay, I'm willing to put my faith under the bus, to find a faith that speaks of my worth. And all of this is about not being silent or silenced. And we hope that you will join us with that understanding, that this will become a part of your journey as you move along through this Lenten season, as you continue to grow in your faith, as you continue to experience your victories and your triumphs, as you continue to sharpen the hearing of that voice, the listening process, all of which Dr. Jamie has put out to us tonight, and she may not feel an obligation to, but I feel she's responsible to explain herself. Not trying to embarrass you, but this has been an incredible broadcast. Thank you, Chaplain Mo, for your contribution. Thank you, Pastor Sue, for your remarks in the private chat. And we want to also thank you for finally biting the bullet and going into seminary. And we know that these are difficult times for both you and me. We've got papers to get done and chapters to write in this book, and yet you are faithful. By the way, happy belated birthday this past Tuesday. And we thank God for you and your work at the as the national youth minister of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, also known as TFAM, and your work at the Shepherd's Table at your church, Rivers of Living Water, where the founder is the Reverend Dr. Vanessa M. Brown. Just received her doctorate less than a week ago. Isn't that amazing? And we are so grateful that you are with us. We also must give a shout out to our remarkable Bishop Yvette A. Flunder. Don't know how she lives her life like a centipede. I mean, if you were to ask a centipede, how do you move with all of those legs? Centipede wouldn't be able to answer, just gets the job done from one point to another. And we thank God for our viewing audience. Pray for us, if you will, please. Pray for our veterans, pray for our service members, pray for our faith-based leadership, from whom we have learned a lot of one-sided ways of looking at Holy Writ. That our eyes, in total, our eyes will be open, particularly our third eye, where we see things as God sees them, and our third ear, where we hear things as God hears them. And that we will always be looking for the God in ourselves and the God in others. God is there. There's nothing you've done. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you will ever be able to do to get God out of your life. That is your breath. That is your spirit. And that is just the way it is. Until next time, good night.